Coming up, the Mets walk off against the Yankees. This is Locked On Game to Game MLB.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game MLB. Local experts join us to recap all of the action for you from yesterday across Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. We thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. A sixth straight loss has Milwaukee all the way back down to 500 on the season, with their latest defeat coming on Wednesday to the Twins in Minnesota. After the Twins scored 4 runs early to secure the victory, Locked On Twins recaps the final.
For the second game in a row, the Twins dug a small hole at the beginning of the game and climbed out of it in a 4-2 win over the Brewers to cap a mini sweep before the Tigers come to town. Edouard Julien did something we've only seen one other time in Twins history, more on that in a minute, and Carlos Correa kept the good times rolling by reaching twice, including a 2-run triple in the third when they scored all of their runs. Bailey Ober was great, even despite allowing a pair of home runs, and Brock Stewart, Juan Duran, and Griffin Jacks combined with Ober to strike out 12 and walk just 1. Now, today's stat that you won't hear anywhere else: Edouard Julien is just the second Twin ever to have 4 straight games with a double and a walk. Joe Mauer also did so from June 10th to 14th in 2013, and he's also the first big league player to do so since 2013, when Bryce Harper did so in August. The last player and only player to do that in more than 4 games was Billy Werber back in 1906. Fun fact, Werber lived until 2009 and passed when he was
The final game of this series needed extra innings, but the Giants did manage to finish a 3-game sweep of the Cards last night with a 3-run 10th inning. After a 5th straight loss, Locked On Cardinals goes over the game and the series.
The Cardinals snatch defeat from the jaws of victory as they get swept by the San Francisco Giants. Hey, it's JD from Locked On Cardinals, and the Cardinals held a 5-3 lead with 2 outs and 2 strikes on the hitter in the bottom of the 9th when Giovanni Gallego serves up a 4-seam fastball right down the middle. Has it deposited into the right field stands to tie up the game. The Giants then score 3 in the top of the 10th inning off the corpse of Steven Matz, and the Cardinals lose their 5th in a row by a score of 8-5. This organization, this front office, this coaching staff, and these players should be ashamed of themselves. They are terrible. There is not one thing about this team that's positive right now, and I don't blame one fan for cashing out and refusing to spend their hard-earned money or their free time watching this mess anymore. I've never seen anything like this, and if today wasn't enough, I don't know what it's going to take for drastic changes to take place, because this cannot continue. For the latest updates and info, be sure to keep it Locked On Cardinals.
The Mets beat the Yankees in 10 innings last night behind Brandon Nimmo's walk-off at Citi Field. Locked On Yankees has more from the second game of the midweek Subway Series.
Well, we got the pitching matchup that we wanted in Citi Field in Queens. Verlander-Cole lived up to the hype. Kind of. I'm Stacey Gotsoulias, host of Locked On Yankees, and the Yankees and the Mets took it to extra innings where the Mets walked off 4-3. So the Subway Series, at least the first half of it, is a split between the Yankees and the Mets. The pitching matchup, Cole and Verlander, both pitched 6 innings. Cole gave up 4 hits, Verlander gave up 3. They each gave up a run. They did not surrender any walks. And Verlander had 6 strikeouts, Cole had 8 strikeouts. So much better than the Scherzer-Severino matchup. For the Yankees, some exciting things happened, even though they ended up losing that game. The biggest play, I would say, IKF stealing home in the 7th inning. Yankees haven't done that since 2016, and for some reason they stole home 3 different times in 2016, 2 by Jacoby Ellsbury. There's a blast from the past. Anyway, we'll have everything you need to know about this game on the next Locked On Yankees. And what the heck is going on with Aaron Judge? We talk about it.
Coming up, the Blue Jays and Angels get wins on the road. This is Locked On Game to Game MLB. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by Birddogs. They're the most comfortable but also stylish shorts for men. If you go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB and enter the promo code LockedOnMLB, you'll get a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. So that's birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. Welcome back. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game MLB. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. The Orioles didn't get hit until the 7th inning last night, and the Blue Jays beat Baltimore by a 3-run final. Locked On hosts with both teams have more after Toronto's win.
Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. Well, it got dicey at the end there, but Blue Jays hang on for a 3-1 Wednesday night victory to in Game 2 of this series to even this 3-game series at Baltimore and get a rare, but oh boy, a welcomed victory versus an AL East foe, especially considering the Blue Jays had lost 14 of their last 16 in the division. Oof. Jose Berrios. This was a league worst 5.27 ERA in 2022 for Jose Berrios. Just 2 months ago, he got blown up at Houston. That put him at 1-3 with a 6.23 ERA. That was 2 months ago. He's had 10 starts since. He himself is 7-1 over those 10. He shaved 3 runs off of his ERA. Blue Jays 8-2 in those 10 games. My goodness. Again, the Blue Jays seemingly insisted on scoring just 3 runs, but okay, it was enough tonight. Now, join me on Locked On Blue Jays for Throwback Thursday. Tomorrow's with fellow Canadian and 1993 World Series champion with the Blue Jays, Rob Butler, in the house, as we're going to deep dive some throwback stories from that 93 gem of a World Series.
In 162 game season, the Orioles learned on Wednesday night you just can't win them all. And sometimes, even after you score 11 runs in back-to-back games, you don't score much the next day. No hit by Jose Berrios through 6 innings. They lose 3-1 to the Blue Jays to even up the series at 1 game apiece. Honestly, yeah, it was a loss to a divisional opponent, but I feel like I'm not even upset at all about this Orioles loss. Kyle Bradish pitched very well. 7 innings, 1 run. You love to see that. Orioles rallied in the 8th, weren't able to score, rallied in the 9th. They did score a run, got the tying run to first base. They kind of woke up at the end of the game. It wasn't like it was a bad performance by the O's. Sometimes you just lose in a long season, and that's really what happened on Wednesday night. The O's still have a chance to win a series against a divisional opponent on Thursday. Can't ask for much more than that. But I'll recap the Orioles roster moves and a tough loss coming up on Thursday's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
The Rangers broke a tie in the 7th inning with the back-to-back home runs against the Angels. That sent Texas to their first win in a 4-game series against Los Angeles. Our Locked On Angels and Rangers hosts both chime in on how it happened in Arlington.
Rangers break their losing streak with a 6-3 win and got some huge contributions from the $500 million middle infield, their number 9 hitter, and of course the bullpen. I'm Bryce Patrick, host of the Locked On Rangers podcast. This was a close one for the Rangers. They had been in some close battles with the Angels in 2 games they probably should have won to begin this series. They were down 0-2 in a 4-game series and have not lost back-to-back series since the beginning of this year, and they were in danger of losing this one, but they got huge contributions from the bullpen despite only 3 2/3 innings from Andrew Heaney. Grant Anderson, 2 1/3 innings of perfect baseball. Josh Sborz, 2 innings of scoreless baseball. Will Smith came in, allowed an Ohtani bomb, but still closed it out for the Rangers. Texas got home runs from their $500 million middle infield. Marcus Semien, who'd been in a bit of a drought, comes up with a big 2-run shot. Seager follows it up, going back-to-back, and early on, Leody Taveras homered. Great win for the Rangers to break that streak.
Detmers gave the Angels 6 strong innings, but unfortunately the bullpen gave the Rangers the win. What's going on, everybody? It's John Frisch, one half of Locked On Angels. Rangers defeat the Angels 6-3 after Detmers goes 6 strong, only giving up a solo home run, getting into a little bit of trouble in the 6th with the bases loaded, but then he struck out the last 2 batters he faced, looked awesome. Jimmy Herget came in, gave up a 2-run home run to Marcus Semien, and then immediately the next pitch gave up a home run to Corey Seager and put this game out of reach after Tucker Davidson let 2 more come around to score despite a Ohtani 2-run home run in the top of the 9th. And Andrew Heaney was on the mound for the Rangers in this one. He left after 3 2/3, but the Angels only got to him for 1 run, and they left tons of runners on base, so that is not delivering when you need to, especially against a guy like Heaney. The Angels have to win this series, and they have to go through Nathan Eovaldi. How can they do it? Mike and I are going to tell you on Locked On Angels, so please join us wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube.
The Reds hit 3 home runs in 1 inning on their way to beating the Royals in Kansas City. Our Locked On Reds host tells us how those helped Cincy pick up a road win against baseball's worst record.
Power! The Cincinnati Reds had all of the power on Wednesday night. What's up? This is Jeff Carr from the Locked On Reds podcast. The Cincinnati Reds completed their sweep of the Kansas City Royals because of the power in the bats with 4 home runs. Count them, 4 homers for America's team. They hadn't had multiple homers in games since last Friday, and here at Kauffman Stadium, the cavernous Kauffman Stadium, they uncorked 4, including Stuart Fairchild, Spencer Steer, Matt McClain, and Jonathan India. You'll love to see that. And then you have Alexis Diaz getting his 22nd save in a row. Don't know why it was necessary, because Daniel Duarte was just not throwing strikes, and the Reds defense had 4 errors on the night. So kind of a weird one, but hey, an ugly win is still a win, and America's team is 1 game under 500.
Welcome back. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game MLB. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. After the Nationals scored 3 runs in the top of the 9th to tie the game in Houston, the Astros walked off on an error from behind the plate to beat Washington on Wednesday. Locked On hosts on both sides have their takes after a pretty wild finish.
Ryan Clary from Locked On Nationals here. Your Washington Nationals lose to the Houston Astros 5-4 in walk-off fashion, you could say. Little quick highlights. Josiah Gray looked really good, even though giving up 4 earned runs, multiple home runs, I know. But when you don't walk guys the way that Josiah Gray did tonight, you get a thumbs up from your boy, Ryan Clary here at Locked On Nationals. Josiah Gray pitched very well. Stone Garrett also adding multiple hits tonight. But let's get into it. 3 runs in the 9th inning. Hey, the Nationals battled back. They tied the game there in the 9th, 4-4. And then you get to the bottom of the 9th with Hunter Harvey coming in the game, loading up the bases there. And then whatever the heck that was in that 9th inning. It's not fun, but hey, it's a good team with the Houston Astros. The Nationals, they shouldn't have been in the game from the get-go. I'm Ryan Clary from Locked On Nationals. Make sure.
What a crazy game. That game should have been locked down and finished before the Astros had to come back in the 9th to walk it off. And that itself was insane as well. Jose Abreu, player of the game, 3 for 4, 3 RBI, a bases clearing double, and a solo shot backed up by Yainer Diaz, who went back-to-back with Abreu. Phenomenal to see. Valdez deals 6 strikeouts, 7 innings, doesn't get the win. Hector Neris, 1 inning, 2 strikeouts. Ryan Presley, 1 inning, 2 hits, 3 runs. Tie ball game. They come back. Jake Myers hits it up the middle. Shortstop throws it to the catcher. Catcher throws it to first. Jake Myers' helmet just happens to stay on, and the ball just happens to go into the outfield, and the Astros win a wild one. They stay within 3.5 of the Rangers. Stay tuned to the Locked On Astros. We're your team every day. Check us out on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Become an everydayer. Go Stros.
The Diamondbacks lost in extras last night to the Phillies, who got back to 500 on the season with a 2nd straight win in Arizona. Locked On Diamondbacks tells us what went wrong for Arizona in the loss.
The D-backs almost pulled off the comeback, but weren't able to get it done in extra innings. Miller Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks here. The D-backs were down 3 runs for most of the game. Merrill Kelly was pitching just fine, gave up a few walks, a few extra base hits, but overall 3 earned runs over 6 innings, 7 strikeouts. You'll definitely take that, but the D-backs offense was pretty quiet. Ranger Suarez, the pitcher for the Phillies, was pitching into the 7th. He was looking good until Christian Walker was able to turn on one and tied up late with a 3-run dinger. The D-backs go to extra innings. They have a miscue where one of their infielders and one of their outfielders collided in the outfield. The ball drops, puts Trey Turner in easy scoring position with, of course, 1 out because you got the runner on second rule in extra innings. The Phillies end up scoring a run in the top of the 10th, and the D-backs with Corbin Carroll at the plate is not able to get it done with 2 outs. And they end up losing to the Philadelphia Phillies 4-3. But guess what? It's a 4-game series. The D-backs might be down 2-1 in the series, but with 1 game left, they can still tie it up and split it with Philadelphia.
Michael Wacha's 7 scoreless innings led the way for the Padres last night in a shutout win over the Guardians. Our Locked On Padres host has a little bit more on the 5-0 victory in San Diego.
That was a lot of fun. I hope we do it again. What's going on, everybody? Javier Reyes here for Locked On Padres podcast. As you know, and Spider-Man right behind me, Padres win 2nd game in a row against the Cleveland Guardians. This one 5-0 behind another good Michael Wacha start, who I'm starting to think might not just be this sort of okay guy who's going to regress at some point. What if he's just a pretty good pitcher? I mean, it's not unheard of for a guy, but he might just be this late bloomer who's figuring things out later into his career. His changeup looked great, generated a lot of whiffs on that tonight. No earned runs. That was really cool, despite the scare in that 7th inning. But thankfully, Steven Wilson came in and cleaned it up. But the big star of the night, Fernando Tatis Jr., 1 home run, 2 doubles, and a great defensive play. Oh, by the way, 2 stolen bases, but also a defensive play at the end of the game to nab the runner trying to kind of turn the corner at first base and like a fake off, make it look like he was throwing a second. Like, I used to do that type of move, looking another direction, like in dodgeball or something, and this guy just brought it to the outfield. He has been a revelation on defense in the outfield this year. It's been huge. Shout out Tatis, shout out Wacha. Hopefully maybe they get the sweep tomorrow, but either way, Padres looking a little bit better. So stay tuned for the podcast tomorrow and all future episodes, of course, guys. Locked On Padres, and I don't know, go see Spider-Verse too. Go do that. The good times are rolling. Keep it going, Padres. Woo!
That's it for this edition of Locked On Game to Game MLB. As always, we thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Now make sure you're subscribed to Locked On MLB and your favorite team's Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.